Local news, national news, even feel-good news. Delivering the topics that are relevant to you.
That's why I listen to Joe. He covers it all.
The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO.
Let me tell you just how hot it was today, or how hot it is right now. This afternoon, I had to go out and run a couple of errands. Usually I get here to the radio station in the morning about 10 a.m., 11 a.m. in the morning, and then I don't leave until after 7 p.m., and I don't drive my car typically during the heat of the afternoon. But today I had to go run a couple of errands in the middle of the afternoon, about 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And like a lot of people, I've got a cell phone holder that suction cups to my windshield of my car, and then it holds my phone in place for me. I had been driving my car for plenty of time, enough time for my car to cool off, right? So I was comfortable on the inside. But suddenly I look at my phone, and I don't know if you guys know this, but if your phone gets too hot, if your phone overheats, it will basically shut down. It'll put up a little screen that says, I don't remember what it said, your phone is too hot, let your phone cool down. I'm like, how's my phone so hot? Because I've got the air conditioner on and it's cool in my car, but I realized it was the sun coming through the windshield, baking the back side of my phone. So I grabbed my phone down off of the holder and darn near burned my hand when I grabbed my phone because it was so hot just from the sun's rays through my windshield, even though I had the air conditioner cranked all the way down to 20 degrees below zero inside my car. And then the carmometer, of course, read like 105 degrees. Let us know what your carmometer is reading right now. If you're in our chat, I see Frank says his carmometer is at 106 right now. The actual temperature is 97 degrees right now in Orlando. It is definitely a hot one today. We got a lot to cover coming up at 5:25. We're going to have all the headlines that you missed while you're at work today. I will tell you, we had a lot of breaking news today. Today was a busy, in fact, since we started doing that segment of stories you missed while you're at work, we had more stories today than we've ever had before. So we've got a long segment there to get through all the headlines of stories that broke while you were likely at work today. If you're a 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or 7 to 9 or whatever the case may be, we'll have that for you coming up at 25 after the hour. So stand by for that. First, I want to start off with Diane Feinstein. Diane Feinstein, the senator from California, the senior senator from California. And when I say the senior senator from California, I mean the senior senator from California. She is 90 years old. She is the oldest member of the U.S. Congress. She's not the oldest ever in the U.S. Congress. We have had members of Congress who have hit 100. She is the sprite age of only 90 compared to 100. But to just give you a couple of examples of difficulties that Diane Feinstein has had in recent days. Diane Feinstein was out for 3 months with shingles. And when she came back to the Senate, a reporter asked her about being away for 3 months and what it was like to be back.
How you were feeling since you returned?
I'm feeling fine.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the leg.
The leg?
Yes.
What's wrong with it?
Well, nothing.
Nothing?
It's anyone's concern
Okay.
but mine.
What has the response from your colleagues been like? What have the well wishes? What have you heard?
What have I heard about what?
About your return. How have they felt about your
No,
return?
I haven't been gone.
Okay.
You should follow them. I haven't been gone. I've been working.
You've been working from home is what you're saying?
No, I've been here. I've been voting. Please, either no or don't know.
What do you say to Californians like Ro Khanna who say you should resign?
You know, and she displays the same flashes of anger that we see from Joe Biden, which are signs of dementia. When people flash in anger, what they're really angry at is themselves, because they're realizing, oh my gosh, I'm not remembering something. He's asking me these questions, and based upon the questions he's asking me, I have no idea what he's asking me about. So I'm angry, and I'm going to lash out at him. And she was just, flat out rude to that reporter. And I don't know if you could hear all of her comments. Some of them were kind of quiet, but the guy was nice. He asked questions in a respectful manner, and she basically bit his head off. How dare you ask? And then, of course, she had no idea whatsoever that she was gone for 3 months. And that is certainly troubling. More recently, there was a roll call vote in the Senate, and Diane Feinstein, when they got to her, instead of just saying yay or nay, she started a speech.
It funds priorities submitted. Yeah, just say aye. Okay, just aye. Thank you.
And that's just embarrassing. It is embarrassing to have our U.S. Congress become a convalescent home. My question for you is this. Do you think that we should have term limits in the U.S. Congress, and or should there be an upper age limit? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. I'll tell you right now that I absolutely favor term limits. And I would be willing to consider an upper age limit in the U.S. Congress. There are plenty of good reasons for term limits, and there are a couple of reasons why we shouldn't have term limits, and I'll put them all on the table for you. Some of the reasons why I think term limits are a good idea is it encourages fresh perspectives. You get a fresh set of eyeballs, a fresh brain, fresh set of ears on a difficulty, and having some fresh blood can be very helpful. Look around your environment where you work. I look at our newsroom and I think, man, when we get the 22-year-old employees that come in here, I am always glad because it's a fresh set of eyes and ears. There's someone that can look at things differently than how we have looked at them for all these years. Another reason why I'm in favor of term limits is it reduces the influence of career politicians like Diane Feinstein. They become too connected, disconnected really from the realities of their own constituencies because they live in D.C. They don't live in their home districts. Also, it fosters competitive elections. Incumbents almost always get reelected. Almost always get reelected. Incumbents have strategic advantage. And if there's term limits, we won't have incumbents all the time. Implementing term limits will combat corruption and special interest influence. The longer an incumbent serves in office, the closer the ties they develop with lobbyists and special interest groups, which can have a whole lot of undue influence and potential corruption. And it reflects the will of the people because polls consistently show that Americans support term limits for members of Congress. So those, for me, are the reasons why we want term limits. To be fair and to kind of present the other side of that, if you will, some of the reasons why you may not want term limits, and the biggest one for me is what they call institutional knowledge, and that is having a long enough memory that you remember. You'll remember that. Well, we tried to pass a bill like that, back in 2001, and here's why it didn't work. So it keeps you from repeating mistakes. Similarly, again, to like our newsroom or probably where you work, there's got to be someone, a senior employee somewhere where you work that remembers when you guys tried doing this, that, or the other, back in the 1980s or 90s or 2000s or something like that. Secondly, a lot of people argue we already have term limits and they're called elections. I don't argue that because incumbents are more likely to win in their re-elections. Incumbents are more likely to win than a challenger. A reason why term limits are bad, potentially, is that there are some complex policy challenges that require a very long time to be properly implemented. When there's energy policies or environmental policies or anything else like that, sometimes it takes more than a 2-year term and a 4-year term to be able to get those things all the way through. So there you have both sides of the debate and the argument for and against term limits. Where do you stand on that now? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app.
In answer to your question about term limits, yeah, that's one thing that all of my friends, left, right, center kind of thing, they all agree on that. Term limits. For everybody.
For everybody. Man, I'm with you on that one. All right, 844-580-WDBO. Use the open mic in the WDBO app. Coming up next, the stories that you missed while you were down in the mines today. We'll have that for you coming up next on the Joe Kelly Show on WDBO.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk.
Hey there, car reads at 110 degrees right now, and that's coming from good old Sanford, Florida.
Yeah, that's hot. It's the thermometers are seriously.
For the last 2 days, Joe, my car thermometer has been telling me it's 103 degrees on my way home out here in Polk County, and that thermometer don't lie.
Paul, what about you? Go ahead,
Am I
Paul.
on the air?
Yeah, you are now.
We had a car fire earlier today, and people were actually gathering around it to cool off. So it was hot.
I feel like there's a little hyperbole there, maybe a little bit of exaggeration, but I get where you're coming from. All right, if you're just joining us here on the Joe Kelly Show and you've been at work all day, you've been down on the factory floor making the things that close the other things, or you have been out on the sales call, or you've been otherwise engaged throughout the day today, here are the stories that you missed. First, 8 hours ago, The Hill was the first to report that the Republican National Committee announced that Fox Business will host the second GOP presidential primary debate next month. You know, you'd think that Fox Business would have broke that story, but no, The Hill broke that story. 7 hours ago, the American woman and her young child that were kidnapped in Haiti are now free and safe. They were kidnapped in Haiti on July 27th. Haiti remains a very, very dangerous place. 7 hours ago, NBC reported 311 victims of child sexual exploitation have been identified in a Homeland Security investigation of cold cases. 6 hours ago, Newsmax had the story. The United States and Saudi Arabia have agreed to the parameters of a deal for Saudi Arabia to recognize Israel in exchange for concessions to the Palestinians. This, as you may be aware, is part of the Abraham Accords, and it was a program that got started under the Donald Trump administration. 6 hours ago, the New York Times had the story. We did as well. Governor DeSantis of Florida suspends the top state prosecutor in Orlando. The second time in a year, he has taken the rare step of removing an elected state attorney. In both cases, I'm not reading anymore. I'm just adding color to it. But in both cases, it was prosecutors that DeSantis accused of not fully and properly doing their job. 6 hours ago, CBS had the news of what we've been talking about. Senator Diane Feinstein was hospitalized after falling in her home in San Francisco. Feinstein is 90 years old, and she refuses to quit her Senate seat. Nobody wants to relinquish power when they have it. 5 hours ago, Newsmax had the story. The House Oversight Committee, led by Congressman James Comer, has released new bank records from Hunter Biden's business dealings with individuals from Russia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine. The $17 million figure that the Biden crime family has raked in so far is now up to $20 million, according to Comer's investigation. 3 hours ago, CNN reported that the special counsel that is investigating Donald Trump has secured a search warrant for the former president's Twitter account. That, according to a newly unsealed court filing, and that is going to be really interesting to see what they find in Donald Trump's Twitter account, because not only, if you're not on Twitter, you don't understand Twitter, then perhaps you're unaware of some of the nuances of Twitter, because you're thinking, well, what would be the big deal? Because all of his tweets are public. Yes, his tweets are public, or whatever they're called now. But if he is sending direct messages or receiving direct messages, those are private and not for public consumption. Presumably, That is what the special counsel now has in their possession. 3 hours ago, the New York Times reported that Henry Ruggs, a former wide receiver for the Raiders, was sentenced to at least 3 years in jail for his role in a crash that killed a woman in Las Vegas back in 2021. New York Times had the story 3 hours ago, caring for tens of thousands of asylum seekers will cost New York $12 billion over 3 years. That, according to the mayor there, Eric Adams. He is making a plea for federal aid. You know, why don't they just stop being a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state, and then perhaps the governors of the southern states will stop sending the asylum seekers there. 2 hours ago, CNN had the story that a judge sides with prosecutors and says that the Gilgo Beach murder suspect must provide a DNA sample. Well, good. An hour ago, NBC News, and I've got a feeling that this story is not going to play as big as it should. I think this is a bigger story than almost any story that has come out today. The FBI shot and killed a man who had made threats against President Biden and the Manhattan District Attorney that is prosecuting former President Trump. They were executing a search warrant against this guy who had made threats against Joe Biden and the Manhattan District Attorney. The FBI shot and killed the guy.
If the guy threatened to shoot Trump, the FBI probably would have drove him to Trump's house. You know it's true.
I don't know that's true, but I understand why you might think that. 59 minutes ago, Huffington Post, Robbie Robertson, the musician best known as the lead guitarist for the band, is dead at the age of 80. 26 minutes ago, NBC News. Oh, my gosh, this story is so heartbreaking out of Hawaii. I don't know if you're following what's happening in Hawaii right now, but at least 6 people have died in wildfires in Hawaii as search and rescue efforts continue. The Coast Guard has rescued many residents who fled to the ocean to escape the fires. All Hawaiian islands are under a red flag warning. Part of the wind is coming from a Hurricane Dora, that is in the Pacific right now. And lastly, just a couple of minutes ago, Bloomberg had the story. Disney is increasing the price of Disney Plus as much as 27% as it looks to narrow streaming losses further while traditional TV revenues decline. So Disney Plus subscribers, you may need to be rethinking that right about now. I'm Joe Kelly. You're listening to The Joe Kelly Show. We'll continue coming up straight ahead.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. Join the conversation now by using the open mic in the WDBO app. Now, The Joe Kelly Show on Orlando's news and talk, WDBO.
Senator Diane Feinstein.
Join the conversation now by using the open mic in the WDBO app. Now, The Joe Kelly Show on Orlando's news and talk, WDBO.
Senator Diane Feinstein.
The conversation now by using the open mic in the WDBO app. Now, The Joe Kelly Show on Orlando's news and talk, WDBO.
Senator Diane Feinstein, 90 years old. She's the oldest current member of the U.S. Congress. You get a little bit more time in the House, but a Senate term is 6 years, a House term is 2 years.
In answer to your question about term limits, yeah, that's one thing that all of my friends, left, right, center kind of thing, they all agree on that. Term limits for everybody.
For everybody. And you make a good point for all your friends, left, right, and center. This is not a partisan issue. One would hope it's not a partisan issue. It just happens that at the moment, the oldest and most incapacitated members of our federal government are both Democrats. So that would be President Biden and Senator Diane Feinstein.
Absolutely, Joe. When they start losing their mental capacity, they got to go. When their aides have to start telling them how to vote and where they're at, they're not capable of doing their job anymore.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Term limits, absolutely. No more career politicians lining their pockets with our money.
Yeah, I wonder how Joe Biden became a millionaire when he was one of the poorest members of the U.S. Senate. How did that happen?
Hey, Joe. There's already term limits to the president, but I think there should be an age limit to the president.
Yeah. Laurel, this next open mic, I'm reasonably sure he is impersonating me in the open mic.
Uh-oh.
I think. Take a listen. Let's see. You can decide.
Term limits. Yes, Joe Kelly. Yes. Did I hit it? I think that was a pretty good impression.
Yeah, that was a you.
So that was me. He wasn't doing you. He was doing me.
He definitely wasn't. No, that was a you.
Yes, I said yes. See, I was doing him, doing me, in case you didn't notice.
Term limits, yes. Age limits, yes. If you have to retire at 65, you can't serve past 65.
Now, I was talking about Twitter a little while ago.
Joe, they're not tweets anymore. We'll just call them expletives.
Oh, yes. But didn't Elon Musk or somebody say what they're supposed to be called now?
I thought they were X's or something. They're called that.
I don't want to call them X's. I mean, X's sounds like a person you once dated.
That's true.
You know, and I don't want to do that.
Woo! 100 degrees today. Man, it was so hot that I actually saw two trees fight over a dog.
It was so hot, I saw two hobbits throw a ring over I-4. Because there's there in the thing, and so I had to drive. I had to drive an Uber today. Not drive. I rode in an Uber today. Nice guy, nice driver, and he picked me up in a Tesla. I don't know what I've never driven a Tesla before, and I've only had minimal exposure to being in a Tesla. Every time I've ever been in a Tesla, it was taking an Uber somewhere. But since I had the flat tire yesterday, I had to take an Uber this morning from my house out in West Orange County to basically downtown. And the driver was listening to a book on tape. And I thought that was interesting that he was. And I thought, well, if I talk, I'm going to interrupt him listening to his book on tape. And you know what book on tape he was listening to? I would literally give you $1,000, Laurel, if you could if you randomly threw out what book on tape he was listening to.
Oh, it has to be one you know. You know what? Actually, I'm just going to guess the Bible.
Oh, wow. No, that would be a good guess. I am assuming it was Harry Potter because they kept talking about Sirius Snape or something. Or
it's either Severus Snape or Sirius Black.
It might have been Sirius Black and Severus Snape. I don't know what it was. But he was definitely listening to Harry Potter on his during the Uber ride. So I thought that was kind of cool.
In response to term limits, you're going to have to do it by years because of the difference in the length of terms. So either 12 years or 24 years. In response to an age, 75 would be a good number to say you can't start a new term after age 75.
24 years? I mean, 24 years? That's, I mean, if we're going to have term limits, 24 years is a long time to allow somebody to be in the Congress. I think that's too long. I think the 12 years for both House and Senate, I think that's the sweet spot, man. I think that's the one that works really, really well. But can you imagine our Congress and think about all the members of Congress? Ted Cruz comes to mind, who ran on a pledge of term limits only to change their minds once they get in office. That happens a lot. So that just drives me nuts. And I cannot imagine that members of Congress are going to step up and say, you know what, America is right. We should limit how much power we have and how long we have that power. It is regrettably never going to happen. And I don't think that's the kind of thing that we can vote a referendum on. It would have to be a constitutional amendment. Paul Cross.
Question for you, Joe.
Yes.
Isn't this what you just said? You said it happens a lot. Isn't that what DeSantis did? He changed the law so that he could retain his governorship and run for president. Wasn't it something in there that
he
said
did?
You couldn't keep the governorship?
He did. Well, yes and no. So without getting too deep into the weeds, because I get lost in the weeds, but
Yeah, so do I. That's why I'm asking you.
There were some legal experts who said that in the way our Florida laws are currently written, he wouldn't have had to give up. That's the one office. The governor's office is the one office that doesn't have to be vacated if you're seeking another office. Every other statewide office you do, but to your point, just to be sure, the state legislature did add some new language to it that made it abundantly clear that he could continue to run for president while still holding his seat as governor. But he, just like the governor before him, is term limited to 2 terms as the governor of Florida. And frankly, as good of a job as I think that Ron DeSantis has done, I like the idea that he's going to be limited to 2 terms. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. Use the open mic and the WDBO app. Jose is joining us from Apopka. What's up, Jose?
What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Okay, well, you're Joe. I'm Jose. We have the same name, except yours is in English and mine is in Spanish.
That's right.
Listen, man, my car was like shaking, so I checked it out. I thought that it was the tires, and sure enough, it was the tires. And I was sweating. I was pouring sweat. So I got a joke for you. It's so hot. It's hotter than 6 fat chicks in a minivan with no AC fighting over a chicken nugget.
Okay. All right, Jose.
That's all I mean. Man, you do quite well, and I love your views on things and how you talk about things, and we need somebody like you on the radio, man.
Thanks, buddy.
I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. That was very nice of you. I mean, the compliment part was nice. The joke, kind of inappropriate, but the compliment was very nice. So thank you so much for that. My name is Joe Kelly. You can join us at 844-580-WDBO. Use the open mic and the WDBO app. Coming up next, Donald Trump is being slammed by some, and he'll be slammed by me, for saying that he would prefer to leave America. Hang on, you'll hear Donald Trump in his own words. That is coming up next on The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO.
The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO. Talk and discussion on the latest breaking national news.
Crude oil prices continue to fall.
Local news.
You're not going to have Disney have its own government in Central Florida.
And stories that matter to you. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let your voice be heard on The Joe Kelly Show.
Hey, don't forget, coming up, I'm so excited about this. It's the 5th annual WDBO Make-A-Wish Wish-A-thon. It is Friday, August 25th, y'all. It's one day only this year. It's 12 hours only. So it's like half of a day this year. So we're going to really need everybody's support on this. Join me as I broadcast live for one day for our Wish-A-thon at Urban Air Adventure. It's near Cranes Roost Park in Altamont Springs. We'll be out there from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Big thanks to City Kia of Greater Orlando for being our title sponsor again this year. Open the WDBO app right now. You can tap the Make-A-Wish button for Wish-A-thon details. And if you'd like to donate, thank you in advance for that. I really appreciate it. I haven't made my donation yet this year, but I'll probably wait until the 25th, and I'll make my donation on the 25th. All right, Donald Trump was on the stump in, he was, I believe he was in Iowa, and made this comment that people are now criticizing.
Oh, it's a phony story. They know it's a phony story. They say he's going to go to jail. These are not Mrs. Lewandowski. You hear that? Can you imagine if that were these kids? Can you imagine look what your husband got me into? I could have been relaxing at Mar-a-Lago or in the south of France, which I would prefer being in this country, frankly.
Now, I'm sorry. I don't like that. I don't like... I don't know if he's joking. I don't know his sense of humor. Even if he's joking, I do not like that. I think y'all know how I feel about Donald Trump. If he is the last candidate standing, which at this point it looks like he may be, he will have my vote. I will be holding my nose as I cast my vote for Donald Trump. But how do you say that you'd prefer being in another country? That is just so unpresidential. That is so unpresidential candidate, and it's so un-American. I mean, you're no better than these Hollywood leftists who'd say that they're going to leave America, if Donald Trump got elected. I mean, that's no better. And I don't appreciate it. I don't like it. And I just don't. This is not the first time he's spoken ill of America, and it bothers me. I don't need someone to be a cheerleader. I don't need somebody to sugarcoat things. I know America has problems. But if you live and die by politics, then it's a much bigger problem. If you live and die by your family and your faith and your community, there's a lot to love in America right now. I'm Joe Kelly. You can join me at 844-580-WDBO or hit me up in the open mic in the WDBO app.
The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO. Now, WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Triple Team Traffic.
Crews are still putting out that vehicle fire on Colonial westbound at McGuire Boulevard. They have the right lane closed there. It's already a very busy area. But again, if you're westbound on Colonial near the airport, you're going to have some trouble getting by there until they get this all cleared up. Still have a crash on Colonial at Grayson Drive as well. That's just west of Rouse Road. ProTech Air Conditioning and Plumbing Service for honesty, integrity, and 100% customer satisfaction. Call ProTech 407-291-1644 or visit ProTechAC.com. From the WDBO Triple Team Traffic Center, I'm Paul Cross.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. In-depth segments on topics that matter to Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO.
I love your show every night. You're doing great, bud.
I'm so glad you're joining us here on the Joe Kelly Show. Thank you so much for being a part of the program today. It was revealed today through a social media post that the floating security buoys, the floating security buoys that they have in the Rio Grande River right now, evidently somebody was able to zoom in on these buoys, and in between each buoy is what appears to be a circular saw blade. Now, I looked at it. It is not a circular saw blade, but for all intents and purposes, it is a circular saw blade. So just to be clear, it's not a circular saw blade, but it is a metal disc with a serrated edge that certainly could rip open skin if you grab onto it as you're trying to cross over the Rio Grande River into the United States. And as you might imagine, the left has gone apoplectic. That mean old Governor Abbott from Texas would be so cruel as to place circular saw blades between the buoys in the middle of the Rio Grande River. Now, 2 people have died trying to cross the Rio Grande River, and there is a disagreement between the Mexican government and Texas Governor Greg Abbott. The Mexican government blames the border security measures. Governor Greg Abbott and his team say the people died before they even got to the buoys anyway. Well, as you might imagine, I've got a few thoughts on this. One, crossing over a border illegally is dangerous. Making your way through Mexican desert led by coyotes and drug dealers is dangerous. Once you get to the other side of the Rio Grande River, it is lined with concertina or razor wire or barbed wire, if that helps. So the buoys in the middle of the river are but one obstacle that would-be immigrants face when they're trying to cross the border and get into the United States. But I still think it begs the question, do you think it's appropriate to have circular saw blades? Again, not circular saw blades, but effectively they're circular saw blades. Do you think it is appropriate to have them in between each of those orange buoys? If you want to get an example and see what it looks like, you'll find it right now. Just pull up the WDBO app and look for this story in the WDBO app, and you'll be able to see it in the story there. They do look like circular saw blades, and they do look like they would hurt. They do look like they would rip skin quite easily, young children and women and whatnot. But clearly the federal government, and by the federal government I most specifically mean Joe Biden, is not doing his job in securing our border, and something must be done. Do you think Governor Abbott wants to do this? Do you think Governor Abbott wants to be the guy who has to solve the crisis at the border? Do you think Governor Abbott is the president of the United States? Do you think Governor Abbott has the resources of the federal government of the United States? No. No, 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 and no. None of those are true. Governor Abbott is dealing with someone else's mess. Governor Abbott is dealing with Joe Biden's mess. And while I don't want to see people getting cut up and hurt on circular saw blades, not circular saw blades, I don't know what other options Greg Abbott has. I, frankly, applaud his ingenuity. I don't know whether or not it was Greg Abbott's idea or if he just has staff members that said, hey, I have an idea. The latter is probably more true than the former. But I think that unless and until the Biden administration steps up and does their job, then governors like Abbott and to a lesser extent DeSantis have got to step up and play that part. They've got to take that role. They've got to take that task. So I just don't think there's any room for anybody to criticize because the federal government's not doing their job. And the states are limited as to what things they can actually do, what things they can actually pull off. And that is Governor Greg Abbott's attempt to do something about it. You know, plenty of would-be immigrants have died before the buoys were put in place. Plenty of would-be immigrants have died drowning trying to get across the river. Plenty of would-be immigrants have died of dehydration, getting through the Mexican and then the Texas deserts, especially when it's as hot as it has been right now. What do you guys think? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. Use the open mic in the WDBO app. You can join our chat group at any time on the WDBO Facebook page. From there, you'll be able to see video of everybody behind the scenes. You'll see what everybody looks like, what everybody is wearing today, in some cases what people are eating today. You might be able to see an occasional PPI from someone's wife. But check out the video during the live video stream in our chat room right now on the WDBO Facebook page. All right, 844-580-WDBO. Let's go to Bart in Orlando. What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing okay, Joe. Hey, we got a lot of people who don't show up to work, and we got a lot of people who walked from Venezuela or somewhere in South America, Central America, all the way to Orlando, for instance, to get a job. You know, as far as the job interview goes, you walk thousands of miles to get a job to work here, you're hired. They're going to show up tomorrow. They're going to show up every day. They want a job. Okay, now when it comes to our border being totally porous and wide open, let's think of how many four-person commando teams can cross our border. Well, if you've got 100 people, you've got 25 four-person squads. If you've got 1,000 people, you got 250 four-person squads. If you got 10,000 people, you got 2,500.
Hang on, man. Bart, you're making me have to do math here. You got to get to the point.
Well, the point is if we don't know who's coming across the border, then we've got real issues on security. In our country, whether we wanted it or not, we've basically been at war for 30 years, whether we got out of Afghanistan recently or not. Because we may go back. I don't know. I'm not in charge.
Nobody can predict the future.
We've been at war roughly for 30 years, longer than that if you consider, international conflicts here, there, and everywhere. And we're not securing our border. We're not securing the perimeter of our base camp. And the first thing to do is you got to secure the perimeter. And we're not doing that. And whether you're for immigration or against immigration, that's not the point that I'm making. My point is we got to know who's coming in.
Absolutely.
And we have a process for bringing people in, and that process has been subverted by allowing numbers to overwhelm the process. And then after that, people much more clever than I came up with a 7-year process in order to get your U.S. citizenship. And I know a bunch of people who have come here and gotten their citizenship, and they know more about civics and geography than people who were born here. They come here.
Oh, heavens, yes. Absolutely, yes.
They walk 5,000 miles for a job. You're hired. That's the interview process as far as I'm concerned. They really something.
I understand where you're coming from. And for those people, Bart, for the people that come to America that don't have ill intentions and they are coming here just looking for a better life, I understand why they want to be here and why they want to come here. That doesn't mean they still get a free pass and they get to come here, just waltzing across the border. There's got to be, as you say, we have to know who these people are that are coming into our country. I don't know if you saw the pictures recently, but multiple somebodies for years have had trail cameras set up at some of the areas where there are gaps in the fences and easy areas to cross. And people set up trail cameras. And recently the trail cameras captured armed members of the Mexican drug cartels coming into the United States. That is hugely problematic.
It absolutely is. And we have processes in place, and we had processes in place, and people bum rush the border, for lack of a better term. I don't know if that's insensitive or not.
I think that sounds about right.
The border's being overwhelmed, and if you come through a port of entry, and you go through the process, and some people don't have the luxury of going through that process, and I understand that. But if the process is overwhelmed to begin with, there's no way to even look at the people who don't have the ability to go through that process.
Yeah.
We gotta, for lack of a better term, slow it down, just so that we can know who's coming through.
We've got to stop it, Bart. We've got to 100% full stop. Everybody stop what you're doing. We've got to stop people crossing the border. It's got to stop. After we stop people from crossing the border, once we have our borders secure, then we can sit down and have a rational, reasonable discussion about what immigration policy should look like moving forward. But, man, we can't even have a discussion about what immigration policy should look like while tens of thousands of people are crossing the border every month coming into the United States. Even now, our northern border has become as porous as our southern border, and people have figured out that the northern border is not as protected as the southern border. So we're getting it now from both directions, north and south of the United States. And it's got to stop. We cannot. This is unsustainable, and we cannot allow it to continue to happen. And if that means putting circular saw blades, not a circular saw blade, in between each of the buoys in the Rio Grande River, then that's what we need to do. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. We'll get more of your calls and comments for you. Coming up straight ahead, stay with us here on The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO.
The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO. News, weather, traffic, all the things you want on your drive home. Plus, Joe Kelly being, well, Joe Kelly. Now, the Joe Kelly Show on Orlando's News and Talk, WDBO.
Legal immigrants are criminals. You don't come to a country that by breaking the law. Therefore, you are a criminal. Coming as a criminal, you are never going to be a good citizen, period.
Yeah, we're talking about outcry here as someone has discovered that in the Rio Grande River, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, he put these buoys that are in the Rio Grande, in the middle of the Rio Grande River now that are deterrents. They're there to stop people from crossing the river. Well, somebody discovered that there are essentially circular saw blades. They're not really circular saw blades, but they look an awful lot. They're circular, they're made of metal, and they have serrated teeth. And we're discussing whether or not that's appropriate to have that on in the middle of the river. The Mexican government is saying that 2 people have died after getting tangled up in the buoys. While Texas Governor Greg Abbott has confirmed that 2 people have died, he says they died before they even got to the buoys.
Joe, as far as Abbott goes, he and the guy under him, something really strange. Look, each of them don't have a birth date.
What?
And they don't have any records prior to 1974.
What? They don't have a birth date. Greg Abbott's birthday is November 13th, 1957. He's got a pretty extensive record prior to 1974. I mean, he graduated from the University of Texas. And the guy under him was Ken Paxton, but Ken Paxton has run into some legal problems. So that's now a thing. But otherwise, I don't get the rest of that.
This is Ken from Orlando regarding the so-called saw blades between the buoys and the Rio Grande. Look, the issue is real simple. Just go to a normal border checkpoint and you'll be fine. If you want to come into this country, do it legally and you will be fine.
By the way, Laurel, did you hear about the woman in Texas that claims that she was attacked by both a snake and a hawk at the same time?
Yeah, I watched a report on that this morning.
Well, let's take a listen.
It was like I couldn't believe what was happening.
Peggy Jones of Silsbee was mowing the back 6 acres of her home on Tuesday, August 1st, when a snake fell down onto her from above.
He was starting to dart at my face and come into my face, and he was striking my glasses. And he just kept on and I just couldn't get rid of the snake. And it was like, I think I went into survival mode.
Jones says a hawk then came down and pulled the snake from her arm, but not before leaving severe cuts and puncture wounds.
The hawk came down 4 times to get the snake off of my arm. When I looked down, I had blood all over my clothes. I had blood all over my arm. My arm was torn to shreds, and I had severe bruising.
Jones's husband took her to Altus Emergency Room in Lumberton, where they learned she hadn't been bitten by the snake, but it had done damage to her glasses. Jones describes the entire ordeal as traumatizing.
The only thing that I could think of, my husband was at the front of the property and I was screaming and I knew he couldn't hear me. And the only thing I could think of was just to call on Jesus' name to come and help me.
Her arm is now healing, but she says the emotional scars will need to heal too.
You try to sleep at night, you can't sleep. And you're afraid to shut your eyes because you know if you shut your eyes and you go to sleep, then you're going to have a nightmare and you're going to relive this situation.
But she is amazed at the outpouring of support and says her view of life has changed.
I'm happy I'm alive. I'm happy I'm here. My family didn't ever mean less to me. They just mean more to me now than before, because it showed me how in the blink of an eye things can change. Like I said, I feel differently about life now. I'm just so blessed.
Blessed and known across the country after her story went viral. What matters most to Peggy, though, is that she's healing and recovering. I'm Sydney Ferguson, reporting.
You know, I hate to be that guy, but is she being a little melodramatic about the snake and hawk attack?
I just can't imagine. She says the hawk dropped the snake on her arm.
Right. So
the snake bit her face, and then the hawk grabbed the snake back off of her arm.
Yeah. Did you see her arm?
I did. Yeah, and it does look like something cut it up.
You know what it looks like? First thing I thought of when I saw her arm was I thought of my wife's meatloaf.
Oh gosh.
Because it has ketchup on the top,
Yeah.
right? So
Oh,
there's like
goodness
that
gracious.
there's like that tomato sauce on the top of it. Her arm looked like meatloaf, and I suddenly got hungry, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I want meatloaf."
When I saw her face didn't look bit up.
No. In fact, in that report, they said that the snake hit her glasses.
Oh, not her
and
actual
didn't
face.
bite her face.
Oh.
I never heard what kind of snake it was, if it was a venomous snake or not a venomous snake.
In the report I saw, she had a stuffed fake snake, and she was showing how it was wrapped around her arm and biting her.
I feel
That was weird.
I feel like she's a little melodramatic, talking about not being able to sleep. I mean, like she's suffering PTSD. I'm sure it was bizarre to have a snake.
Right, but what are the chances of that happening again?
Yeah,
to you?
no, it's that could never happen again in a million years. The impossibility of it all. Coming up next, more big changes for Disney. We'll splain. Coming up next on WDBO. When it was Gannett as well. It was owned by a newspaper company. It's actually it recently, until just about 2 weeks ago, was owned by Cox Media Group, the same company that owns WDBO. But we sold our Houston cluster.
Yeah, we're on the 15th floor over there in
right next
the
to
towers.
right next to the Summit.
Right at the Summit. That's exactly right.
Which is
Anyway.
now Joel Osteen's church.
Yeah, sadly, right.
Small
we
world.
Over some fun old days.
Yeah,
but I'm
man.
living today the injustice that's going on with this immigration. My fiance's in the Philippines, and people need to look at the other side of this. It takes me 4 to 5 years to get the lady I love. Now, get a hold of this. She's got a master's degree in education. So $8,000 in 4 to 5 years to get her over here to be an American citizen when people are pouring across the border. I would not be surprised if the cartel are not paying the big guy 10% of the human trafficking and drugs that are coming over the border. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, that is interesting, Larry. And I mean, has there ever been a moment in which you thought that you would try to sneak your wife across the border?
I've been tempted to, but fellow Christian like you got to do it the right way. You know, that's why I got out of radio, turned my life over to him, and I said, you know what, I don't, no more cocaine with Bruce Willis or all the fun. We used to have on the Q Morning too, but you know what?
Those
I live
were
in
the
a better
days.
life, and the Lord, I've been singing with Easy Top, but you know what? The Lord's in control. But I want people to understand that those of us that are trying to get someone over, I mean, we say we need teachers. She's got a master's degree in education.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine whose daughter fell in love with a guy that was in the United States illegally. And they ended up getting married, and he made the mistake of going back across the border to try to enter legally. But once they found out he had already been here illegally, it set him back. And I don't remember the exact specifics of it, but I know that it set him back, another 10 years or longer before he'd be able to be allowed back into the United States legally. And it is a system that regrettably encourages people to break the law. I mean, we've got a flawed border policy, but we also have a flawed immigration policy.
Yeah, major injustice, my
Larry,
brother. Hope to catch up later.
Yeah, man, great talking to you. What a fun trip down memory lane this has been for me. So thank you so much. Have a good night, Larry. You can join me at 844-580-WDBO, 844-580-9326, or use the open mic in the WDBO app. I just saw this story from Disney. Disney has announced changes for ESPN. ESPN has announced an agreement with Penn Entertainment, Penn, Penn Entertainment, to launch something called ESPN BET. Can you believe that? ESPN BET. So what is that going to be? So that's going to be that's going to be sports for black athletes, right? Is that what we're talking about here? Could you even imagine for a moment if ESPN launched some sort of sports for white athletes, I mean, can you imagine the outcry that we would have for something like, hang on, what? What is that? It's what? It is? Oh, well, that's quite a bit different than as those. Evidently, it's ESPN Bet, and it is about sports betting. It's not. They really should call it something else, shouldn't they? So their news service is a branded sports book for fans in the United States. It will be the home to ESPN sports betting content across all platforms. Speaking about radio, excuse me, one of the most famous radio stations in America is in San Francisco, and it's KGO Radio. And KGO Radio for decades was one of America's highest rated, most popular talk radio stations. Now, because it was in San Francisco, as you might imagine, it was pretty left-leaning, and it worked in San Francisco. It's probably the only left-leaning radio station that actually works or worked in America. It's no longer a talk radio station. They were the first radio station in America to change to sports betting. And I didn't realize that sports betting had become such a big thing. You know, when it's something that is not in your own wheelhouse. I am neither a sports guy nor am I a gambler. So I just didn't realize how things had changed. Paul Cross, you're a bit of a sports guy, aren't you? I mean, is that something that's on your radar, is sports gambling and stuff? And I think the rise in popularity of these sports betting apps has really led to the widespread acceptance of sports gambling.
It certainly has made it a lot easier to put money down on your favorite team. There's no doubt about that at all. I've never been a big gambler. I've never gone to Vegas and said, here, take my money on, the Orioles to win the World Series. Never done that.
Yeah.
But I see how easy it is now, and it tries to attract the younger crowd to get into this. It's kind of an addictive thing, too. So it's not a great thing, but it's something that needs to be monitored.
And am I correct in saying or thinking that the fantasy sports, is that something that you can also bet on? Is that a wageable, bettable thing, fantasy sports leagues?
Anything can be bet on at this point.
That's a very
anything at all.
Very good point about that, yeah. So I'll have to try this someday. I lived in Las Vegas for darn near a decade, and I did not spend much time. The only time we would go to the casinos, to be honest with you, there was two reasons why we would go to the casinos. One was to go to the buffets. Because they
used to be great.
They used to be, and they used to be
$5. You get all you can eat for days.
I was going to say, and they used to be affordable. Yeah. And the only other reason why I would ever go to the casinos, well, I guess there's three reasons. Sometimes to see a show, a concert, or something like that. And then the third reason would be if you ever have family in from out of town. You would often take them down to a casino to show them a good time, and you'd gamble.
You have just given the reasons of being in Orlando as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Same for the theme parks. Like, I don't, if you live here, you don't go to Disney unless you got family in town. Then you're taking the family to Disney.
We become a destination for family and friends.
Absolutely so. I'm Joe Kelly. You can join me at 844-580-WDBO, 844-580-9326, or use the open mic in the WDBO app.
The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO. Now, the three big things you need to know.
Three. Well, it's been months, but there's finally a winner in the record-setting $1.58 billion Mega Millions jackpot. One lucky ticket in Florida matched all the numbers in Tuesday night's drawing. Two. Former Raiders receiver Henry Ruggs sentenced today for drunk driving crash that killed a woman in Las Vegas. Ruggs pleaded guilty in May to the felony DUI count and misdemeanor charge of vehicular manslaughter. One. Hawaii's acting governor Sylvia Luke is activating the National Guard in response to a series of fires that have triggered evacuations on Maui and the Big Island. Crews are battling 3 major wind-driven wildfires on Maui and at least 4 brush fires on the Big Island.
The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO. Insightful.
You tell the truth from your point of view.
Entertaining.
Man, that guy is a lot taller than he sounds on the radio.
And engaging.
When we hear you on the radio, it's a good thing.
The Joe Kelly Show on WDBO.
Hey, do you remember yesterday? Laurel, think real hard. Do you remember yesterday? It was about 24 hours ago.
Yeah, vaguely.
Okay. So we were talking about the cars that were found submerged in that lake down in Doral.
Yeah, Adventures with Purpose found them.
Yeah. So, and yesterday I kept saying there was 33 cars. There were 32 cars. The story that I had read said that the Adventures with Purpose guys found one car and found 32 more. So I did the math, simple math. I thought I could figure that out, and that's 33 cars. Evidently, they only found 32 cars. So 32 cars in this lake down in Doral, and they started pulling the cars out. So the Miami-Dade Police Department has so far recovered multiple cars submerged in a lake there in Doral. They think the cars have been there for quite a while because it's in an industrial park, and today there are lots of buildings and stuff around it, but back in the day, that pond was pretty much there all by itself. And so they think that, back in the day, people were stealing cars, going out joyriding, and then they were just driving the cars into the pond so that they could be hidden. So here's what they found on the first day of vehicle recovery. They started pulling out cars today. They found, all right, the first car pulled out was confirmed to be a stolen automobile. It was an Acura Legend. Now, the last time Acura Legends were made were in 1995. So that car has been there for quite a while. Police also pulled a Ford Econoline 3500 and a Cadillac sedan DeVille, and they anticipated extracting two more by the end of yesterday. They expect all the cars to be older make and model, as they were likely dumped there, as I said, before the Walmart Supercenter and a car dealership and some popular chain restaurants were built. But we'll keep an eye on this. We'll keep you updated as to the cars. Basically, it's an underwater parking lot. It's 32 cars underwater in a pond in Doral. I'm Joe Kelly. We got to go.